The Sapphire set began as a declaration of love, but it did not remain one. Behind its glittering stones was a queen who discovered that affection could disappear while duty remained. Instead of destroying the jewels, she changed their meaning and trapped every future wearer inside her pain. The set was said to have been commissioned in private for a young royal bride entering a marriage the nation had been taught to believe was secure, romantic, and necessary for the future of the crown. Nothing about the gift was meant to suggest sorrow. The sapphires had been chosen carefully because they represented loyalty, permanence, and truth. They were supposed to speak for a marriage that would endure when words were no longer enough. Yet in time, those same stones became a cruel reminder of everything the marriage had failed to protect. The queen slowly discovered that her husband's private loyalties had shifted. There were conversations that ended when she entered a room, letters that passed through trusted hands, and absences that could no longer be explained by duty. She understood the betrayal, but she also understood the prison surrounding her. A public confrontation would not only damage the king, it could weaken the monarchy itself. So she remained silent where the nation could see her, while her anger found another target. She turned toward the jewels. She did not return them. She did not order the sapphires broken apart or sold. That would have looked like defeat. Instead, she commanded that the complete set be removed from ordinary use. In her mind, the stones had become too powerful to remain symbols of a wife whose position depended upon her husband's love. They would wait until that dependence was over. When the king died, the woman who had once endured humiliation as his consort changed. Widowhood brought grief, but it also brought control. She gained greater command over her household, her money, her letters, and the way she presented herself to the world. For the first time, her authority no longer rested entirely beside a living king. Only then did she wear the sapphires again. The act transformed them. They were no longer a wedding gift. They became a declaration of survival, proof that she had endured marriage, betrayal, and loss without disappearing. From that moment, the first version of the rule took shape. No reigning queen consort could wear the complete set while her husband remained on the throne. A brooch or single stone might be borrowed, but the full arrangement belonged to a royal widow. Later palace officials preserved the restriction because it served a useful purpose. It separated the reigning queen from the king's surviving widow, giving each woman her own symbols and boundaries. But the rule also became a private test. Any queen who asked for the set too soon risked appearing to imagine the king's death, or to prepare for power beyond him. That shadow now reaches Camilla. Like the queen before her, she entered a complicated royal marriage, survived public judgment, and learned that the crown never truly forgets its old wounds. But the original queen's private decision was only the beginning. Over generations, palace lawyers and jewel custodians transformed her wounded instruction into a precise rule, and that rule explains exactly why Camilla cannot wear the sapphires today. The restriction is not based on Camilla's popularity, Diana's memory, or Charles's personal wishes. The true rule is colder. The complete sapphire set belongs only to a queen whose reign beside a king has ended, meaning Camilla cannot wear it unless she becomes Queen Dowager. That is the heart of the mystery. The full set is reserved for the widow of a deceased king. A woman may carry the title of queen, stand beside the sovereign, attend state ceremonies, and wear some of the greatest treasures in the royal collection. Yet these particular sapphires remain beyond her reach while her husband lives. Queenship alone is not enough. A Queen Dowager is a woman who keeps her royal rank after the death of her husband, but is no longer married to the reigning monarch. Her position is unusual. She belongs to the previous reign, yet continues into the next. She carries memory, grief, experience, and a kind of authority no longer dependent on standing beside a living king. That is why the palace separates the two roles so carefully. A queen consort represents partnership, duty, and service beside the sovereign. Her power is connected to his reign. A queen dowager represents survival after that reign has ended. She becomes a living bridge between what has passed and what is still to come. Camilla's coronation did not unlock the Sapphire case. It only brought her closer to the condition written around it. The final key is not promotion. It is bereavement, and that makes the rule deeply unsettling. If Camilla appeared in the complete set while Charles was still alive, palace insiders could interpret it as more than a mistake. It could look like she had stepped symbolically into widowhood before her husband's death. In the royal world, where jewels speak as loudly as titles, such an act could be seen as impatient, threatening, or even prophetic. The restriction is not publicly displayed in any official guide. Yet inside the monarchy, it is protected through custody records, private household instructions, and a sealed memorandum passed from one generation of jewel guardians to the next. The rule may be hidden from the public, but within the vault, it is treated as binding. Camilla cannot simply cancel it. The sapphires are not considered ordinary personal jewelry. They are dynastic property, controlled by inherited conditions, royal precedent, and the approval of those responsible for protecting the crown's symbols. Breaking that tradition would create more than embarrassment. Critics could claim Camilla was preparing an independent court, building a separate legacy, or securing her position after Charles before the monarchy had even entered that painful future. That is the cruelest part. The jewel she may desire most becomes available only through the loss she would fear most. Charles's life keeps the sapphires locked away. His death would release them, yet one question remains impossible to ignore. Elizabeth II had the authority to weaken the restriction, rewrite it, or remove it completely. She chose not to. The wording explained the restriction, but it did not explain the late Queen's determination to preserve it. That answer lay inside a private meeting, where Elizabeth reportedly warned Camilla that some jewels were not rewards, and some doors should never be opened early. Camilla expected resistance from courtiers, historians, and perhaps the public. She did not expect it from Elizabeth herself. When the sapphire set was mentioned during a private jewelry review, the late Queen reportedly ended the discussion with a warning so direct that no one in the room dared speak. The meeting took place while preparations were being made for a major royal occasion. Several historic pieces had been brought forward for consideration, each one connected to a different reign, duty, or public message. Camilla had already learned that choosing royal jewelry was never simply about beauty. Every necklace could revive an old memory. Every bruch could be read as approval, defiance, or surrender. As the pieces were reviewed, one absence became impossible to ignore. The sapphire set was not there. Camilla asked carefully whether it had been removed for restoration, insurance evaluation, or possible resizing. The question sounded ordinary, but the reaction was not. A senior custodian paused before answering. Papers were adjusted. Eyes lowered. The silence revealed what words had not yet admitted. This was not a matter of maintenance. It was a boundary. Elizabeth answered herself. The set, she explained, was not available to the wife of a reigning king. It did not matter how senior Camilla became, how faithfully she served, or what title she might one day hold. While Charles lived and reigned, the complete sapphires remained closed to her. Camilla did not openly challenge the Queen. That would have been reckless. Instead, she asked whether the rule was ceremonial, whether it allowed exceptions, or whether it could be amended if circumstances changed. Elizabeth's response was restrained, but final. The restriction existed because queens sometimes desired symbols that did not yet belong to their stage of life. Rank could arrive before wisdom. Ambition could appear before grief. The palace, she suggested, had learned to protect certain objects from both. Then came the warning. Camilla was not to ask for the set again while Charles was alive. Another request would have to be recorded by the royal household, and once written down, it could survive for decades. Future historians might not see curiosity. They might see expectation. They might claim she had been preparing for widowhood before the king was gone. Elizabeth's concern was not superstition alone. A photograph, rumor, or leaked request could trigger speculation about Charles's health, succession plans, and Camilla's position after his death. One jewel could create a crisis larger than the woman wearing it. For Camilla, the message cut deeply. She had spent years proving loyalty to the monarchy, yet invisible limits still surrounded her. Elizabeth did not appear to doubt Camilla's present service. She feared how history might judge her future power. After the meeting, the Sapphire case was reportedly moved into a more secure compartment. An additional instruction was placed inside the inventory file. But that order did more than block access. It also named who would control the set if Camilla ever became Queen Dowager. Camilla obeyed the order in public, but the Sapphire set had now become more than a forbidden jewel. It was a message about the future, and when a single blue stone appeared unexpectedly at a royal gathering, the palace feared someone had tested the rule. The complete set remained locked away, yet during one carefully staged palace evening, a sapphire believed to belong to it appeared beneath the lights. It was only one stone, but in a family where every jewel carries rank, that single flash of blue was enough to trigger panic. The reception had been designed to project calm, order, and royal confidence. Senior members of the family moved among diplomats, private secretaries, and guests from old aristocratic houses who understood that palace jewelry was never chosen by accident. Every piece carried a history. Every choice sent a message. Then, Camilla entered wearing a sapphire brooch. At first, few people questioned it. The royal collection contained many blue stones, and most guests assumed it was simply another historic piece selected for the evening. But one elderly attendee looked twice. She recognized the strange diamond border, the unusual shape, and the deep central stone said to belong to the Forbidden Dowager set. She quietly alerted a former palace official. From that moment, the mood changed without anyone raising their voice. Messages began passing between staff members. A private secretary stepped away. A jewel custodian was contacted. Faces remained composed, but beneath the surface, the household had entered a controlled emergency. The question was immediate and dangerous. Had Camilla knowingly taken one piece from the set Elizabeth had forbidden her to request? Or had the brooch been presented to her without its true history? The answer was complicated by a narrow loophole. The restriction covered the complete sapphire arrangement. Individual elements could technically be worn if they had been formally detached, given separate inventory numbers, and approved as independent jewels. It was the kind of technical exception that could exist for decades without being tested. Someone appeared to have tested it. If Camilla wore the sapphire without scandal, the palace could later argue that the old rule had already begun to weaken. One stone today could become two tomorrow, and eventually the complete set might no longer seem forbidden at all. Charles noticed the unease around her. He saw staff exchanging looks and understood that something had shifted. But asking publicly would have exposed the problem. His silence protected Camilla in the room while making the private consequences far more serious. After the reception, the brooch was removed from Camilla's jewelry tray before she returned to her rooms. No explanation was given. No formal accusation was made. The stone simply disappeared. A later review of the vault records reportedly revealed that the central sapphire had been released under authorization from an office powerful enough to bypass ordinary procedure. The paperwork existed. The approval was real. But the signature was not Camilla's. Someone else had wanted the jewel seen. Someone had used the loophole deliberately, perhaps to embarrass her, perhaps to weaken Elizabeth's command, or perhaps to force Charles into defending Camilla against the guardians of the collection. The missing signature shifted the mystery away from Camilla and toward the machinery surrounding her. Someone within the royal household had discovered that the Sapphire rule was not merely about jewelry, it could be used to shape the balance of power after Charles. Behind the argument over sapphires was a far greater struggle. What would happen to Camilla if Charles died first? The jewel's guardians were not simply preserving tradition. They were deciding whether a widowed queen would remain powerful or quietly disappear when a new reign began. Becoming Queen Dowager would not guarantee Camilla the same influence she holds beside Charles. Her title might remain, but titles alone do not control rooms, schedules, residences, staff, or access. The moment a new monarch took the throne, the center of royal power would shift. Offices would change hands. Loyalties would be tested. The people who once answered to Camilla could suddenly begin answering to someone else. Inside the palace, two rival views had already begun to form. One side believed Camilla should remain visible, respected, and protected as the widow of a king. They argued that years of duty could not simply be erased by death. The other side believed the next monarch's household must take immediate control, with no competing court and no powerful figure from the previous reign standing too close to the throne. That was why the sapphire set mattered. The first time Camilla wore it as Queen Dowager would be more than a jewelry choice. It would announce that she had survived one reign and entered another with official recognition. She would not appear broken or pushed aside. She would appear established, experienced, and still royal in her own right. Some courtiers feared exactly that. Camilla in the complete sapphires could look stronger after widowhood, not weaker. She would carry her own history, her own trusted circle, and the authority of a woman who had endured public hatred, scandal, coronation, and loss. To those guarding the next reign, that image could seem less like continuity and more like competition. The struggle would also reach far beyond jewels. Control of residences, private correspondence, ceremonial pieces, household budgets, and loyal staff could decide whether Camilla remained close to power or was quietly isolated from it. Elizabeth's sealed instruction made the danger even clearer. Final approval for Camilla's first appearance in the set would belong to the incoming sovereign, not to Camilla herself. Permission would signal acceptance. Delay would expose uncertainty. Refusal could become a royal rejection hidden beneath the language of timing and tradition. For Camilla, that possibility struck at a private fear. Much of her adult life had been defined by Charles. Without him, she would discover whether the monarchy valued her as a person or only as the woman beside the king. Charles understood the risk. He wanted her protected, yet planning her future meant discussing his own death. It could also look as though they were preparing a separate court before his reign had ended. He reportedly considered changing the instruction, then hesitated. Any amendment could reopen old wounds involving Diana, succession, and public trust. And even that was not the final obstacle. Camilla's future now depended not only on widowhood, but on permission. And buried beneath the original inventory was a final clause identifying the woman whose approval could keep the sapphires locked away even after the throne beside Camilla became empty. Camilla had believed death was the final key. It was not. The old sapphire instruction contained one last safeguard. Before a new Queen Dowager could wear the set, the reigning monarch's household had to confirm that her appearance would not overshadow the woman now standing closest to the throne. That condition changed everything. Even after Charles's death, the sapphires would not automatically pass into Camilla's hands. Their release would depend upon the judgment of the new sovereign's court, because dowager jewels were never allowed to challenge the image of the current reign. The shift would happen immediately. Camilla's grief would be private, but nothing around her would remain private for long. Her title, Residence, staff, schedule, public appearances, and access to the royal collection would all become part of a wider transition. The monarchy would be mourning one king while building the authority of another. And at the center of that change would stand Catherine. Her own elevation would arrive at the same moment Camilla entered widowhood. One woman would represent the reign that had ended. The other would embody the one just beginning. Both would carry the title of queen in different ways, and every public choice would invite comparison. Catherine might not personally control the final decision, yet her household, advisors, ceremonial position, and need to establish the new reign would shape whether Camilla's Sapphire appearance was approved, delayed, or quietly restricted. This would not be a simple rivalry. Catherine could feel genuine compassion for Camilla while still understanding the danger of allowing the previous queen to dominate the opening months of a new era. Sympathy and duty would pull in opposite directions. The risk was powerful. If Camilla appeared too soon in the legendary set, the moment could overwhelm memorial events, fuel comparisons between the two women, and make widowhood look almost like a second coronation. Instead of appearing bereaved, she might appear newly empowered. Elizabeth's instruction reportedly addressed that fear with strict timing. The sapphires were not to be worn during official mourning, at the first major state occasions of the new reign, or before the new queen had established her own public identity. That delay could last months. It could last years. For Camilla, the choice would become almost impossible. Ask too early, and she could be accused of ambition. Remain silent, and the palace might decide she no longer wished to wear them, or no longer deserved to. There was one path toward reconciliation. Catherine could choose to present the sapphires to Camilla herself. Such an act would transform the set from a symbol of competition into a gesture of continuity between royal women. But there was a darker outcome. The jewels could be judged too divisive, too loaded with old pain, and too dangerous for the new reign. Camilla could meet every condition and still watch the case return permanently to the vault. The final decision would therefore be made not at a coronation, but in the aftermath of a funeral, when grief, succession, memory, and ambition collide. And Camilla must decide whether wearing the sapphires would honor Charles or expose everything she had tried to survive. The sapphire set appears to be a prize waiting at the end of Camilla's royal journey. In truth, it is the opposite. She can claim it only when the man who brought her into the palace is gone, and when the monarchy decides she still belongs without him. For now, the case remains sealed, hidden behind layers of security while Camilla carries out the duties of a reigning queen. She may wear crowns, diamonds, and treasures linked to centuries of royal power, but the sapphires wait in silence. Their message is cruelly simple. Queenship can place a crown upon her head, yet only widowhood can release these stones. If the vault is ever opened for her, the authorization would arrive during the darkest period of her life. Charles would be gone. Around Camilla, officials would already be discussing mourning clothes, funeral duties, residences, titles, household budgets, and her position beneath a new sovereign. While she struggled with personal loss, the monarchy would be deciding what remained hers. Then, the Sapphire case would appear. Camilla might once have imagined that moment as recognition, the final acceptance of a woman who had survived decades of judgment. But facing the complete set after Charles's death would not feel like victory. It would be proof that the condition once spoken of in private had become real. The lock would open only because the life beside her had ended, and she might not wear it. The jewels could be legally available and still feel emotionally impossible. Every sapphire would carry the same reminder: Charles's absence had made them hers. What had once seemed forbidden might suddenly become unbearable. Three paths would remain. Camilla could wear the set at a carefully chosen memorial occasion, presenting herself as a Queen Dowager who had survived scandal, rejection, coronation, and grief without being erased by a new reign. She could accept the jewels, but keep them private, allowing the palace to recognize her status without turning sorrow into spectacle. Or she could refuse them completely, ordering the case returned untouched to the vault. That refusal could become her most powerful act. By walking away, Camilla would break the cycle begun by the betrayed queen, who transformed a wedding gift into a badge of widowhood. She would reject the belief that grief must be displayed as authority. Perhaps that was Elizabeth's true test. By preserving the rule, she may have intended neither punishment nor reward. She may have wanted Camilla to understand that royal symbols become most dangerous when they arrive during a person's deepest vulnerability. The sapphires are not forbidden because Camilla is unworthy. They are forbidden because their meaning depends upon a transformation she has not yet endured. So when the vault eventually opens, will Camilla place the sapphires around her neck, or realize that the price of wearing them was always too high? Until that day, the sapphires will remain exactly where the monarchy wants them, hidden behind steel, guarded by a rule no coronation can defeat, waiting for a queen to lose her king before discovering whether the palace still recognizes her crown.